Hello, I'm Don Barrett, Human Resources Manager for the South Jersey Performance Cluster. What you're about to see and hear is very emotional and very graphic. This is Dana's story, the story of a young girl's decision that impacted her life and the lives of so many others. This is going to be told to you by our very own Christi Maliepaard, Dana's mother.
Hi, my name's Christi Maliepaard, and I wonder if you'd do something for me. When I say start, if you'd count, and when I say stop, if you'd think to yourself about how long that time was. Start, stop. Was it about a second? That second would have changed everything I'm going to share with you today, and would have changed the rest of my life and the rest of so many people's lives if that 1 second decision would have been different. What do you think is the most dangerous thing you'll do today? Driving? Most of us don't think of it because we do it so often. But what if I told you I was going hunting today and I was going to be out in the woods with all those hunters with guns? Would you then say hunting? But what is the difference if my head impacts a windshield or if I'm shot in the head? The damage to my brain is the same. And what we're doing all day long is allowing people to fire bullets at us, and we're firing our 1,000 pounds of bullet at other people. Would you be content to have someone fire a shot 3 feet to the right of you, or 3 feet to the left of you, or in front of you, or from behind you? And that's what's happening all day long while we're driving on the highways. I'm going to tell you Dana's story, and I'm going to let Dana help me tell you her story. Dana, when she was about 6 or 7, made a book, and she lined out her 2 terrific decades, 20 years. Dana was born in 1980 in Germany. And in Germany, during the 1980s, we were on a military base, and you did not go without wearing a seatbelt on a military base. If you did drive through the front gate without your belt, everybody got in trouble. You, your husband, you had to go up before the base commander. So Dana learned at a very early age that she had to be restrained. You had to be in a car seat, a seatbelt. And after that point, we never went without seatbelts. This is Dana's birth certificate. She was born in Bitburg, Germany on May 9th, 1980. A little bit after that, we moved, and we were on our way to Michigan. In 1982, we moved to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where it snows a lot, which tires you out. In 1983, we were back home, and they were at their uncle's house, and Dana thought it was important that she sat on a bear rug for the first time. Dana was the kind of kid that wherever she was in front of a camera. We were at the mall, and she was looking at the Christmas decorations and made the newspaper that year. There's Santa Claus. Dana wrote this letter to Santa. In it she says, I've been a little bit bad, but I'll try a little harder to be better. I still love you, Santa. Can you trust me? This was Dana in 1st grade. This is with her brother and her sister. They were flying model airplanes. If you want to know what Dana thought of life, you can look at her 4th birthday party. She was blowing out her candle, and she was excited, and she was excited, and she was excited. This is a little girl coming down a big sliding board and sitting on a big horse. Dana had no fear. All it took was a bra, some toilet paper, and a Pepsi carton, and you were a majorette. Dana had her birthday at Showbiz. She thought that was important. There's her going through, having her party. She was always cheeky for the camera. That's her in the middle of her brother and sister. In 1987, Dana thought it was important that she got her first 10-speed bike. And this was her first communion picture. Dana loved that dress. This is the dress that she wore for her first communion. And she wore it until I wouldn't let her wear it anymore. She wore it for her school pictures that year, and she wore it till her little butt hung out the bottom. This was Halloween, which was always a big deal in our house. They were laying out their candy, always cheeky for the camera. A little bad perm time there. 1988, Dana got her glasses. This was Dana as she started doing her own hair with her cousin. Dana was a compassionate kid, and she'd play cards with her grandmother for hours to keep her busy. This was Dana. It looks like she's just jumping off into the water, but actually that's about 50 or 60 feet high, and Dana, she jumped off it. She has uncles who turned around and went down that day and didn't do it with her. She was out on a boat off tubing. When she came home from this, she was black and blue all behind her because they were going so fast and so hard. Dana, she's going through school with her family. She's in front with her sister and a cousin out in the wind. That's my sister's cat. They were just hanging out for the day. This is Dana with her cousin Joshua out at a picnic. She was always around kids and was always babysitting. This is her with her puppy Peanut. She wrote in her composition book that this was one of the best days of her life, is when she got Peanut. And then she'd tie her out again. This is her at her dinner dances with her friends and with her curls. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd hear something in the house. What is that? It's Dana. Oh, Mom, I just thought I'd have curls in my hair today. It's okay, I'm just doing my curls at 4 o'clock in the morning. And more friends, and more friends, and always with her friends. On April 24th, 1996, it was like any other day. I had dropped her brother at soccer. I had dropped her at the high school, and I was taking her older sister out to buy yarn. We left, we went and bought the yarn. We came back, we're to pick Dana up around 9 or 9:30, and we're waiting outside for Dana to come out. Dana doesn't come out, and so her sister's getting aggravated, and she thinks she's in socializing, which is what Dana did best. And finally it was, Mom, I want to go in and get her. And I said, okay, Desiree, go get your sister, but don't embarrass her. Just kind of go off to the side and tell her we got to go, but don't embarrass your sister. She runs in, she comes out with that look on her face. Mom, they want to see you in the office right now. I go into the office, and at those times when you know in your life that something's horrible's happening, but it can't be really you, and I walk in and they hand me the telephone, and it's the hospital, and it's that call where they tell you, just come now. Well, how is she? Just come now. So my daughter and I, who know that something horrible is happening, get into our car and we drive to the hospital. And when we get there, as I approach the front table, over comes, I say my name, and toward me comes the chaplain. And at that moment, I told him, just get away from me, because I knew if he didn't come, this might not be real. And they told me about what was happening, and they moved me over to the room where they take you. And in there I sat with the chaplain a safe distance away, because I think he knew at that point I'd deck him if he came any closer. And they start explaining to you in pieces what's been happening. And what was happening at that time was Dana was in an accident, and it happened here on a road that I travel all the time, a road everyone I work with travels all the time, back and forth. They were heading north. There was a gentleman picking up his car at this car dealership, followed by his wife. He was trying to cross the highway to this cutout, but he made a miscalculation. There was a truck in front of them, and he didn't see their car, and when he passed it, they impacted. This is their car. This is their car. They had to take the roof off to get the kids. None of the people in the car were restrained. The damage that you're looking at, the damage to this dashboard, was caused by my child's body. Could you kick a dashboard this hard? Could you punch it this hard to make the damage that was done to that dashboard? None of the 5 teens in this car were restrained, and the gentleman that was in the other car was not restrained. This is the damage that my Dana did to that car. This is the windshield that still has her hair, where her head impacted the windshield with the side of her face. She was resting on one leg, turned to the back seat. I hope and believe that the last thing Dana was doing was laughing to the back seat when she impacted that windshield. When you look at the back seat, you can see the damage that the 2 kids in the back did. They were not restrained, so they hit the back seat, and they bowed out that back seat and knocked it off its track with the weight of their bodies. Again, you can see how the seat bowed from their weight. Another picture of the car, the damage that was done. This is what the driver did with her body. She actually broke that steering wheel when she impacted. This is the article that was in the paper. It's all that's written about all that would have that happened to me at that point, and all that happened to me after. We see these in the paper all the time, and we assume that people either die or get better, but we never see what goes on after when someone did not make that decision to put their seatbelt on, when they didn't take that second to put on their seatbelt. All of this is now happening because of that second. When you're in shock trauma and they start bringing you things, they brought me Dana's book bag. And in Dana's book bag was her composition book. And in her composition book, she had written on February 29th, 2 months before the accident, she had written, "What I fear most is getting into a car accident. Every time I'm in a car, that's all I think about. When my sister's driving me somewhere, I always remind her to stop at the stop sign, every light, every car that's within 10 feet of our car. She gets mad at me, but oh well." 2 months before the accident, Dana wrote that in her composition book. But for some reason, she did not take that second to click her seatbelt that day. I'll never know why, because Dana was taught from the very beginning. And I know that I would have a much heavier heart if I had not set the example. If you don't wear your seatbelt and your children see you wearing it and not wearing it, you're setting an example that it's all right to go without it sometimes. And it's on those regular days when the sun's shining and there's no rain that something will happen. And you don't want to go through what Dana went through. I'm in shock trauma. I'm being pretty much told that my daughter is dying. The FAIR team is going to be sent out, the Fatal Action Investigation team, and I'm now sitting through the night while Dana's in surgery. I'm there all night with my crying daughter because I had no one else to call. My family is mostly out of town, and I wanted to give them one more night of peaceful sleep. So in the morning I called them after they had brought Dana past me. When she came out of surgery, the nurse comes up and says, "Do you want to see her quickly?" I said, "Yes, I just want to see her." And they bring her past you, and this is how Dana looked. And when I saw her, you're being evaluated all the time now. And I walked up and I said, "Dana, Mommy loves you." And I stepped back because now I have to, if I want access to my child, and people ask me how I can tell this story, because I had to learn that when everything inside me was screaming, I had to be composed, because the only way I would have access to my child, the only way you'll have access to your loved one, is if you learn to be stoned. So these were pictures taken of Dana in shock trauma because I had to take the pictures to document what was happening with her, because I was the only one that had access to the room. At this time, Dana had 22 IV pumps pumping into her. She had a bolt in her brain that was monitoring her brain pressure and relieving the fluid. She had a catheter. She had heart monitors. She was a total of wires. She could not be touched because any stimulation would have increased her brain pressure. You can see the scars from the brain surgery. And something I didn't know that Dana made me learn by not putting on her seatbelt was that they cannot even throw away the hair that they shaved from her head that night. They give it to you. And while you're in the hospital, they gather up all the clothes that Dana was wearing and all the things that she had on when she was in the accident, and they bring it to you, all the bloody clothes. And they had it in a red bag that said Jane Doe. This was not Jane Doe. This was my Dana. And it had what she was wearing, but when they brought it, it was wet because Dana had wet herself when she impacted that windshield. Dana had her retainers in for her braces. I couldn't get her to wear her retainers. Why wasn't she wearing her seatbelt that would have kept her safe? So I had to take these pictures in shock trauma of my daughter's injuries. You don't see a lot of the bruises because they're covered by her casts and her bandages. She was one massive bruise. She impacted with the side of her face. You don't see a lot of it. Her cheek was gone clear through. She still has the collar on because we didn't even know if she had a spinal injury because they couldn't do the x-rays yet. She had abdominal surgery for her abdominal injuries. This was Dana at shock trauma because she did not belt her seatbelt. This is a note that was left for me by the priest who said he had been in to give Dana last rites. For about the first 2 weeks, Dana was in the process of dying. And I would sit in that room and they would come in and out, and every once in a while they'd bring in my mother because Christy needs you, because we think it's going to be now. And I had to learn to sit perfectly still while my daughter was dying. because if I didn't, they'd take me out. Or if I'd be sleeping at night on the cot in shock trauma, because your family never leaves. You've now forced them to live in a little room on cots. And doctor would come in and he'd say, Christi, we think it's going to be now because her pressures aren't good. And I'd go back in the room in the middle of the night and sit in my chair in the corner while my child was dying. But Dana didn't die. Dana did become able to breathe on her own, but we had to leave the hospitals because if you're not getting better, you have to leave. Dana would open her eyes when she was awake, and she would close them when she was sleeping. That was all that we would have from Dana. You could touch her eyes and she would not blink. We had to move into rehabs and learn how to care for Dana. I now had to learn how to do everything for Dana. She had a trach because she couldn't swallow, so you had humidified air. I had to learn. In 1996, Dana thought she was going to learn to like shrimp. I didn't know she disliked them. But Dana never ate again after April 24th, 1996. This is Dana in the rehabs. Remember that happy puppy? We'd take him because we hoped that any stimulation would bring a little bit back from Dana. These are some of the injuries that Dana sustained after she was in the accident. People that didn't know how to lift her or would put her in her wheelchair wrong. This was where they were banging her legs off the stumps. This was Dana as the scars were healing and some of her hair was growing back because another thing I learned is they do not shave all the hair, they only take what they need. And the nurses cleaned her up and I did not have the heart to cut it until later. This was Dana just showing the kind of care. She couldn't even hold her head up. We had a proper head. We had to monitor her oxygen levels. We had to have her feeding pumps. I had to learn how to suction a trach, which is one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I had to learn because Dana didn't put on her seatbelt. This is Dana being fed through a stomach tube. That's how she ate. She never ate shrimp. We tried to stimulate her taste. You'd give her salt, you'd give her sweet to see if we could get any kind of reaction from Dana. Dana, can you move your thumb? I used to lay by her bed and say, Dana, can you move your face? Can you move your finger? Can you move your toes? Is there some way that you can tell Mommy if we're doing okay, if you're in pain? Dana was left with pain. This is moving her joints because every joint on her body had to be moved constantly or else they would atrophy and get smaller. And if someday she came out of it, I wanted her to have her muscles. It took all of these people to lift Dana. Dana had impacted all these people. She could do nothing for herself. This could be you, that everyone is forced now into the vacuum of taking care of you. They do nothing else but take care of you. I was in the nursing homes from 6 o'clock in the morning till midnight because Dana couldn't talk. She couldn't say what she needed. I had to be there because the care that you think is there is not there. And our insurances don't work the way we think they'll work. And you have to fight from this point on for everything for your loved one. I had to fight for all the care that Dana received. This is Dana because if you're not using your bones start to deteriorate. So we would have to lift her into a stander so that we could put weight on those bones so they didn't become brittle and crack. This is how I would stand her up. I had to figure out how am I going to bathe her because I wanted to bring her home. The first day that we got to the nursing home, I was called into a meeting and they asked me, they said, Christi, we'd like to start Dana on oral contraceptives. And if you've run that through your mind, you knew that I had to get Dana home. I wanted her home where she'd be safe. So I had to figure out how to do all these things at home and how to bathe her. So I had to remodel my house. I had to buy a piece of equipment that was about $6,000. I had to do all those things to figure out how I could get her home because remember, Dana could live for 30 or 40 years. We did not know. In 1997, Dana thought that she'd become a ballet dancer. This was Dana in 1997. She could do nothing for herself. Remember Dana? This is who I knew was Dana. And we would carry a poster through the shock trauma, through all the rehabs. This was her poster. And what it would show is that that was the Dana we knew. And when my mother couldn't take it anymore, she would leave and she would go and pick up four-leaf clovers in wherever we were, and we started taping them around the perimeter. And the whole way around this poster are four-leaf clovers. My dad has only found one in his life. It's here. This is to help people when we were going through, when they saw Dana in tubes and wires and scars, to know that that's the Dana that we knew. The only injury Dana probably would have had was this ankle that would have been healed by now. So if she had only had her seatbelt on, none of this would have been happening. We did get Dana home. She's in the middle of the house now in the family room, so she can smell the cooking, she can hear the smell, hear the sounds. Dana loved Days of Our Lives. It was put on every day. She had nurses 2 shifts. I had to do the 3rd. So no longer could I take Carl to his soccer games or Desiree where she had to go. I couldn't leave the house. It wasn't like a baby you could pick up and carry. She could not be left alone, so I was tied to the house from the minute I got home from work to the minute her nurse came around 11:30. And there was so much that had to be done for Dana. She couldn't blink. Her eyes needed lubricated. How do you brush someone's teeth when they can't swallow? You can't get water down their throat. All her equipment, her suction equipment, from all that mucus had to be cleaned. She had to be fed through her tube. Dana had to be moved every 1 to 2 hours. She could not lay in one position more than that. If I didn't have nurses through the night, I'd have to set the timer on my stove for every hour and 15 minutes, hour, 20 minutes, so that I could get up and move her and change her, because she was now in adult diapers. You have to change big diapers then, and I had to do all that lifting and moving by myself, because Dana could do nothing. You couldn't leave her. Her ears would get sore, her knees, her hips, her buttocks. You had to protect everything. Everything had to be done for Dana. We even had to move her because the insurance said that if I took her home, they would not pay because it was better for them if she stayed in the nursing home. So they told me they would not pay for transportation. So I had to figure out, how do I move her from her doctor's appointments and back and forth if she came home? And one of her friends, their family was involved in a volunteer fire company, and they got an ambulance stretcher. And that's how we would move Dana. We'd put her on the stretcher, and we would lift her into our van. And that's my son, Carl. He did so much lifting. His life had now changed too. Everything revolved around his sister when he was home. And he'd try to go and have a normal, but Mom couldn't take him to soccer. Mom couldn't drop him at school. Mom couldn't leave the house. Mom needed him there to help me lift her, move her. This was my family at the time of Dana's accident. There's more of us now. These are the before pictures of the people that knew Dana. You can see Dana with her brother and her sister, and that's me sitting next to them. My sister's in the middle. It was her wedding. My mother and father standing next to them. My mother's, I called them in the morning. They were there for 5 weeks. My dad left work and just came to where I live for 5 weeks, left everything in the fridge, and they were with me. My brother and sister were there. All my brothers and sisters were always there. These are all the people that Dana forced into her care by not putting on her seatbelt. Dana changed and forced all these people to now be totally focused on taking care of her. This is my sister in shock trauma. I took on that last role. If you knew my sister, this picture would just tell you pain, because she would sit all day, 24 hours, and wait for me to run out, get something to eat, go to the bathroom, to try to get back into the room, because I could only go back in the room if they let me. We took Dana home for Easter. This was Johnstown, Pennsylvania, with her grandma. We wanted to see if maybe by taking her to a different environment, if something would change, if we could get some reaction from Dana. And her cousins would sing to her and play with her. On May 18th, a regular day, a normal day, I was taking a shower. My brother and sister had just left me. They had been there. My sister's an RN, and she had helped me through the weekend so that Dana was cared for and I could sleep in longer than an hour 25 intervals. When I went upstairs to shower, Carl came in from outside, and he said, "Mom, something's wrong with Dana." And I hurried, I put on a robe, and I went downstairs. And I knew Dana was gone. I knew that something had happened and that she had stopped breathing. And here's my son handing me the telephone, call 911. But I had a do not resuscitate order. This had been a year, and there, I had accepted what they had all been telling me, that it would not change. And I knew that if something had stopped in her brain, that it would not be good if she came back, would be vents and hospitals, and she would be in a worse condition than she was now. But here was my son handing me the telephone, Mom, and would he understand why I let his sister die? So I dialed 911. And I hung up because I didn't know what to do, and you can't do that with 911 because they call you right back. And I told them that, my daughter, she's in a coma, and she stopped breathing, but I have a do not resuscitate order. I don't know what to do. I was out of my hands again. So much of my life was not in my hands anymore. They came, all the police and the ambulance and all, and again, the only way I can stay with Dana is if I'm composed. And so I just asked, can I stay at her feet? Can I hold her feet? And all this activity, and the police come in, and they says, come with me, I'll get you in the back of the police car, and I'll take you to the hospital so that you're there. And so as I go out to the police car, he shuts the door, and he says, I'll be right back. But now I'm locked in, and I learned then that that's what they do. They lock you in the police car so you're away. And he took me the long way, and they went to the hospital, and I remember saying to the policeman, you don't die when you want to, because I wanted to die with Dana then. She didn't put on her seatbelt. She was now leaving me. When I got to the hospital and I said who I was, and here comes the chaplain, and what room is she in? Because remember, I've had so much practice at this because Dana has been dying for a year. I go to the room and the doctor comes out and I said, have you gotten anything yet? And he says, no. I said, is it time to stop? And he said, yes. Do you want to be with her? We were waiting for you. Of course I want to be with her. I've been with her. I go into the room and people start peeling away and turning things off. And I'm in there with Dana. And while I'm in there with Dana, I remember, what about her organs? And that's something else I had to learn, was how that works. And Dana was able to donate her eyes, her heart valves, and her skin. We finished that, and now I'm sitting there, and I know that the moment that I leave will be the last time I ever see my child. And the nurse is there, and she asked, and I asked her, can I clean her up? And so I did, and I cleaned her up, and she asked me, would you like a lock of her hair? That hair that I couldn't cut till now. And this is the lock of hair that the nurse helped me take from Dana the last time I saw her. And I walked out, and to leave the room was so difficult because I knew I'd never see her again. And I walked out of the room with this, and when that door closed behind me, I realized I was alone because the policeman had gone. I didn't even have a way to get home, so I had to call my neighbor who came and picked me up. And now I had to find my son, who had now gone to a neighbor's house. And as I went around the corner to find Carl, he was in the driveway. And he came toward me and he said, Mom, is she okay? And I said, Carl, she's gone. And at that moment, he fell on me, and I hadn't realized that he had grown. I was expecting to hug him here, but he had grown, and I had missed that because I was taking care of Dana because she didn't put her seatbelt on. That's Dana's obituary. That's what they put in the paper. You shouldn't have one on your child. I shouldn't have one on Dana. Dana should have had her seatbelt on. This is Dana's death certificate. Remember that birth certificate, the beginning? This is the end. If you look at it, it says on the bottom, she was an unrestrained passenger in a motor vehicle. See, we wouldn't have had one if she had been a restrained passenger. In 1999, Dana thought she'd get a ring. In 2000, Dana thought she'd get married. Dana will never get married. Dana will never do anything past April 24th, 1996. This is the cross that you see all the time when you drive by. You see them and you just go by them, and what they're there is to tell you that there was a family and friends and all that extended people who went through something like I'm telling you about because of that decision not to put a seatbelt on. And this was Dana's cross, and it was where the accident was. Her friends, now all they have are the memories. They'll put in memorials to Dana. This was put in by her friend. I get the phone calls on the anniversaries, people not quite knowing what to say because they don't want to remind me. I know the days, the year before they start, I know the days are coming, but they don't want to remind me. This was my Dana. This is what I lost. This is her with her curls. This is all I have now. This is who Dana was. This is all my memories are in this box. This is all I have. This is all your families will have if you don't put your seatbelt on. It's so important that you just take the second to make yourself safe. Thank you.
You've just seen Dana's story, the story of her choice. You have a choice, every postal employee, every employee's family. You have the choice to buckle up. Buckle up now. Be safe for you and for your family and for Dana.